The male lead, Simon, has been a superhero fan since he was little. Naturally, his dream was to become an actor and portray the superhero in his heart. However, just when he went through untold hardships to finally get a background extra role, he was nitpicked over every detail during the actual filming. Whether it was his relationship with the female lead, or whether his props were suitable, or even the lighting crew having opinions about him. In the end, accidents happened as expected. Simon could only force a smile. When he returned to his home, 200 miles away from Hollywood, he suddenly found his girlfriend packing her things. Because Simon had always closed himself off, his relationship ended today. Under the double blow, Simon's blood pressure soared. But at this moment, the mirror and the water cup began to shake violently. It seems he has some unknown secret. After calming down, Simon went to watch an old movie, Midnight Cowboy. However, before the movie even started, someone was talking loudly on the phone. Simon was annoyed and walked over to tell the person to mind the setting. Unexpectedly, he ran into the Mandarin here. As a crazy movie fan, Simon recognized Trevor immediately. He wanted to go up and say a few words, but the movie started. Trevor said not to talk while watching a movie. Just like that, he and Trevor entered the state of the characters and finished watching this 113-minute movie. When the show ended and only the two of them were left, Simon followed him to ask about what Trevor had mentioned on the phone regarding an audition for an important role. The other party told him that the director of Wonder Man decided to remake this classic work. Wonder Man was Simon's favorite movie, so he rushed back to his agency non-stop, wanting the manager to sign him up for the audition. However, the refund for the previous movie hadn't been resolved yet, so the manager naturally didn't agree. Simon simply impersonated the person covering the manager's shift, cut in line for himself, and then raced against time to get to the audition site. As a result, the line for auditions stretched all the way outside the studio lot. Simon began to familiarize himself with the lines, but his state was terrible. Because of his irritation, his eyes actually began to glow. Suddenly, he heard a familiar voice. "You are amazing." Even though Simon wanted to hide himself, Trevor recognized him at a glance. He called him aside and said his current state was not suitable for an audition. Looking at the script, Simon had marked many strange things. Trevor told him that overthinking is a taboo for actors. He taught him to take a deep breath and empty the air from his lungs after going in, so he could perform by intuition. Simon began to recite the lines he knew backwards and forwards. The casting director seemed very satisfied with his performance. That night, Simon and Trevor met at a bar, chatted briefly, left contact information, and then parted ways. But after he left, Trevor suddenly received a phone call. Trevor told the person on the other line that everything is under control. It turns out Trevor's portrayal of the Mandarin was too similar to the real thing, leading to his immediate arrest by the FBI upon returning to the country. However, the FBI had received a request from the Department of Damage Control. They wanted to use Trevor's identity as an actor to get close to Simon to observe and evaluate this superpowered individual. Trevor had no choice but to agree or else face prison. The next day, the manager told Simon that the studio gave him a chance. As long as he could complete a self-tape audition at the Carlisle Hotel, he might be able to participate in the filming of Wonder Man. However, Simon recorded 100 takes at home, but thoughts of his girlfriend leaving kept popping up in his mind. With no other choice, Simon could only ask Trevor for help again. Coincidentally, at this time, the other party was reporting to the Department of Damage Control. The agent gave him a hacking device, wanting Trevor to place it on Simon's computer. So, Trevor waited a few minutes to create the illusion that he was very busy, then rushed downstairs to Simon's house. The operation failed before it even started. Trevor had no choice but to take him back to his own home. But just as they were preparing to film, the neighbor suddenly started playing music. After waiting a long time without it stopping, Simon went numb and asked Trevor if there was anywhere else to go. Trevor actually thought of someone, his partner and rival, Joe Pan. The two immediately rushed to Joe Pan's house. As soon as they entered, Simon was full of flattery, rattling off many classic roles he had played. As they chatted, Joe Pan suddenly said, "Acting is just a job, how to make money is the most important thing," and even mocked Trevor for not having to worry about that anymore. Trevor finally saw Joe Pan's true colors, went up and scolded him, saying Joe Pan was the worst actor, and then prepared to leave with Simon. After going around in circles, the two returned to Simon's house. Here, they completed the shoot, and the results were great. After finishing everything, Simon prepared to go to the bathroom and order pizza. Trevor finally had the chance to hack his computer. During the wait, Trevor suddenly noticed a wall in the back covered by a cloth. The computer hack was also completed. Trevor took the drive back to the Department of Damage Control. It turned out Simon's computer was basically full of selfie videos. Some singing, some dancing, some auditioning. The agents were speechless watching them. However, there were some clues. Next, the agent requested Trevor and Simon to go home together tomorrow to attend Simon's mother's birthday party and find out the details of the fire when Simon was 13 years old. It turns out that over a decade ago, a serious fire occurred when Simon was home alone. Strangely, he was not harmed at all. Police investigations concluded it was a stove fire, but the agent knew that was definitely no ordinary fire. With no choice, Trevor had to wear a wire and shamelessly tag along. With Simon back to his hometown, Mama Lauren welcomed Trevor's arrival, but the brother, Eric, was different. Before the friends and family arrived, Trevor intentionally or unintentionally asked about the fire, even looking a bit deliberate. But before he could ask many details, the relatives all came over. Trevor then targeted these friends and family, but he found that Simon's presence was really too low. Almost no one had any impression of him. After asking around a big circle, there was zero progress. Finally, at lunchtime, brother Eric said his career was on the rise again, and he had a very good position available under him. Essentially, he wanted his younger brother to work with him and stop chasing that illusory Hollywood dream. Simon, naturally, did not agree. Trevor chimed in to help, saying once he entered Fuji, likely a large company reference, he would take off. But Eric suddenly started targeting Trevor, asking him what his purpose was for coming to their family gathering. Seeing the situation, Trevor quickly said he needed to use the restroom. By nightfall, he hadn't gained anything. Lauren talked about Simon's childhood. Actually, Simon had no friends. His father passed away when he was very young. Later, Simon often rode his father's bicycle, always getting himself covered in injuries. Once, when Lauren was helping him clean a wound, Simon said, "Thank you, Mom, for loving me." From this sentence, one could hear that Simon must be very lonely. No mother could bear to hear such words. Lauren was heartbroken at the time, but now she is very happy that Simon finally has a friend. After chatting with Lauren, Trevor quietly watched Simon. He looked so uncomfortable in the crowd. Before going home, Simon gave his mother a gift, an ice cream machine she had always wanted. But the brother just had to be a buzzkill at this moment, accusing Simon of using the money Mom gave him to buy Mom a gift and saying he never knew where he went wrong. Simon didn't speak. He took Trevor and left the house. On the way, he told Trevor that no outsider had ever seen this side of him, only his family knew. He didn't know where the power came from, only that he couldn't let the studio know he had superpowers because after the Dorman Demar incident, superpowered people could no longer be actors. Trevor didn't know who the Dorman was, but his mindset changed now. He got out of the car, pulled out the memory card from the wire, snapped it, and threw it away. It seems he really intended to become Simon's friend. When he returned to the car, Simon brought good news. The studio notified both of them to go to the callback for Wonder Man. The so-called Dorman incident was because a long time ago, an actor named Demar, initially just a nightclub doorman living a mundane life of routine, discovered a hole next to a dumpster while taking out the trash after work one day. There was a pile of strange stuff. Demar tried to touch it and was sucked directly in. Inside was a pure black space with countless doors appearing out of thin air. Demar felt a trance, and the next second he appeared in his own home. Then he heard screams coming from downstairs. Demar hurriedly found his neighbor, but the neighbor was taking a shower. Demar was completely confused. At first, this didn't affect his life, until one time, the nightclub accidentally caught fire and the main door was jammed. After calming down, Demar used his ability to drill in and saved everyone. Once this was reported, everyone knew the name The Doorman. A studio noticed him and planned to let him play a robber who could pass through vault doors. Once the movie aired, it was an instant hit. Demar also made a large sum of money, reaching the peak of his life. However, due to excessive spending, Dimar soon ended up with a pile of debt. Part 2 was about to start shooting. Dimar felt like he grabbed a life-saving straw. But before shooting, his state was poor and he drank a lot of alcohol. He drilled in and never appeared again. Dimar was targeted by the Department of Damage Control. Major film studios issued new regulations prohibiting superpowered individuals from participating in film shooting, known as the Dorman Treaty. But now, Simon completely ignored this rule. However, he was struggling internally. Wonder Man was his dream role, and he was very worried about losing it. Trevor taught him a new breathing method to help him stabilize his mind. After Simon tried it, he felt much better. During this period, the agent kept calling Trevor, but he hung up on them, only saying a friend kept bothering him. Just then, a burly man walked over and asked if Trevor remembered him. Then several men in suits walked over. It turned out Trevor had tried flour, slang for drugs, before, and he got it from these gang members, but he hadn't paid. Seeing Trevor being bullied, Simon decided to intervene. Soon, he used his superpowers to knock down all the gang members. But when he turned his head to look, someone on the street was watching them. Simon immediately pulled Trevor into the car. But it was Friday night, and traffic was gridlocked. It was so crowded that Simon drove directly onto the sidewalk. The other person seemed to be intentionally baiting them, waiting until they got out of the car before running indoors. The two chased him all the way into a bar. The person was sitting there waiting for them. His demand was simple. His motorcycle had been stolen. As long as they helped him steal it back, he would delete the video. Otherwise, the video would automatically upload to the internet at 9 p.m. the next day. With no choice, Simon had to take them to the target location. He wanted to go up and pretend to be police, but the people inside recognized the Mandarin at first glance. After going in and chatting a bit, Trevor immediately felt the young guy outside was the bad guy, and these young people inside were good people. Coincidentally, the gang from yesterday found them again, holding the young guy hostage and knocking on the door. Fortunately, a neighbor saw this scene and called the police. The siren sound was getting closer. Trevor hurriedly asked the little girl if the video in the action camera could be uploaded in real time. She told him it must be downloaded first. Trevor leaned against the door, demanding the young guy push the camera through the small hole first, then asked the little girl to help delete it. At this moment, the police finally arrived. Simultaneously, the manager called to inform them that the callback had been moved up. They had to go to the director's house right now. The scene was chaotic. "Put down the gun, we have to go." Amidst the panic, Trevor even got into the driver's seat. But they couldn't worry about that much. The priority was to escape and rush to the director's house. On the way, Simon kept rehearsing lines with Trevor. His role was Wonder Man, and Trevor's role was the protagonist's best friend, Barnaby. However, the setting in the new script was that Barnaby betrayed Wonder Man. This made Simon extremely nervous, worried he couldn't act out this new plot well, and he even started blaming Trevor for the trouble caused last night, which led to him not resting well and unable to face the audition in his best state. Soon, the two arrived at the director's mansion. They were the last to arrive. At this time, 4 other actors were already sitting in the living room, all of whom had extensive acting experience. In comparison, only Simon was a rookie. Once everyone was there, the director finally appeared and began today's assessment. First was the grouping. The problem was Trevor was arranged to be in a group with Yang Jingji. Simon, already lacking confidence, panicked even more because he had always been performing opposite Trevor. Soon, the first group finished their audition. Simon thought it was awesome, but the director felt the effect was much worse than expected. It wasn't that the actors weren't good enough, but that those lines didn't fit the scene. So the director decided to ditch the script and let them improvise. This was undoubtedly making things worse for Simon. First up were Trevor and Spectacles Bro. The setting was a quarreling couple. Their performance could be said to be very good. Next, the second group was Simon and the tall guy. The setting was also relationship issues. As a result, Simon went off track while acting. I say when. However, the director saw through it at a glance. This was a scene from Pretty Woman. It didn't count as an impromptu performance at all, and the result was very bad. So he decided to go back to the living room to regroup. Trevor came over to help him pick up the pieces, but Simon suddenly started blaming him and mocked him for having a new partner now. This angered Trevor so much he went directly back to the living room. When Simon went over, he learned the director had gone to rest, so he lay down on the sofa. After a while, the director returned to the living room to start a new round of auditions. Simon volunteered to go first. The director changed partners again. This time the setting was an old classmate calling to say hello, but the other person slowly became a bit strange, constantly saying he was dangerous. The next second, Simon woke up from the sofa. It turned out he fell asleep because he was too tired. Now his state was terrible. He decided to go out for some fresh air. Trevor followed him out. Simon said he wanted to give up. He couldn't show his true self. But Trevor told him that the real him didn't refer to those superpowers, but everything he had experienced. Those joys, angers, sorrows, and happiness. Simon was moved to tears by his few words, but they also gave him strength. So, he began to recite Wonder Man's lines. This was his choice, his destined role. This performance stunned everyone. Even the director watched in awe. Then, the assistant led the two to the door and left without saying a word. They thought the result was bad, but just as they wanted to leave, the director stopped them, stating that Simon is Wonder Man. In his mind, Simon had already merged with the character, and Trevor was the Barnaby in his heart. This battle was fought beautifully. Both got the roles they wanted most. In the car, their moods couldn't calm down for a long time. Now they needed to rest well to cope with the upcoming filming. But after Trevor got out of the car and Simon drove away, a black car drove over. It was the people from the Department of Damage Control. They prepared to send Trevor to prison. Trevor quickly said that wouldn't work because Simon was indeed a dangerous person. He needed time to obtain evidence and couldn't be disturbed. The agent thought for a while and could only agree. After all, this also concerned his career. Now Simon's status was completely different. There were specialized assistants to buy milk, tea, and breakfast, and he could ride a golf cart directly to the set. If he wanted to change lines, the director and screenwriters were willing to listen. It was a world of difference from his time as an extra. Moreover, his commercial value skyrocketed. The company prepared a management team specifically for him. Many popular movies and shows wanted to invite him to be the male lead. There was even an exclusive interview with the New York Times. However, when Simon learned that the person interviewing them was Kathy, he instantly became nervous. Kathy was famous in the industry for being vicious. She wouldn't stop until she dug up dirt. Simon was worried his superpowers would be discovered, but Trevor comforted him not to worry, saying they would definitely get through the difficulty. The next day, Kathy came to the set to observe. Today she requested the two to act as if she didn't exist. Everything should just proceed as usual. The assistant asked Simon what tricky breakfast he wanted today, scaring Simon into saying he would go eat at the staff cafeteria later. The assistant also realized she said the wrong thing. Then Simon chatted with many staff members on set, wanting to show his approachability, but it looked strange no matter how you looked at it. The day passed quickly. Tomorrow was the time for the formal interview. Kathy said she had already spoken with Simon's ex-girlfriend, Vivian, and wanted to ask if he had other friends. Simon only said this was enough. That night he found Vivian, wanting to know what she told Kathy. Unexpectedly, she told him not to worry. She didn't say anything, including his little secret. Simon was stunned. He didn't expect Vivian had discovered his superpowers long ago and had been waiting for him to trust her, only she never waited long enough. Fortunately, the interview matter didn't need to be worried about for now. Early on the fourth day, Mom called Simon, saying Kathy came to talk to her yesterday. Of course, she said all good things. However, before hanging up, Mom said brother Eric had also talked to Kathy. Simon instantly felt he was finished. His brother would definitely seize this opportunity to ruin him. However, facts proved he thought too badly of his brother. Kathy said Eric said all good things, including how hardworking and inspiring he was. It was definitely a good story. But now the problem lay with Trevor. She found out that Trevor only returned to Los Angeles 4 months ago and was arrested as soon as he got off the plane. She even took out a video. She was very curious how Trevor turned from a prisoner into an actor. Was there some transaction involved? Hearing this, Trevor fled in panic. Simon hurriedly chased after him. Trevor could only confess everything. Simon only felt his world collapsing. So all of this was just a scam, just to monitor him. This incident was a huge blow to him, and it also had a huge impact on his emotions. The news quickly reached the ears of the Department of Damage Control. The agent immediately set off with everyone. Trevor also saw this tragedy. Simon fled back home overnight. Seeing the news reported on TV, he quickly called his mom, lying that everything was normal, just to say goodbye to her, and then quietly waited for the police to come to his door. But at this time, Trevor suddenly called. The other party first apologized for his behavior, then said he now had a way to make up for all of this. Simon immediately realized what Trevor was doing. Before he could finish speaking, Trevor hung up the phone. Then, the news inserted a newly received video. Unexpectedly, Trevor played the Mandarin one more time and took the blame for last night's explosion onto himself. So those police weren't going to catch Simon. Although the agent's goal wasn't to catch Trevor, it counted as a resolution. Afterwards, Trevor was sent to a supermax prison with the strictest security. Simon was called back to the set. The director wanted to finish filming as soon as possible. The assistant even found the original Wonder Man sunglasses for him. Finally, Simon completed the filming. The movie was a huge success. His family accompanied him to finish watching the premiere. Even his brother was proud of him. Simon became famous overnight. But behind his success was endless emptiness, because he was always worried about Trevor. Later, he found an older man, Chuck, stating that to better supplement the details of a role, he wanted to live with him for a few days. As for what work or what role, he couldn't say. Chuck listened and agreed to his request, bringing him back to his home. The whole family was surprised that a superstar would come home, and they even brought out the beef they had been saving. Later, accompanying Chuck to a physical checkup, he learned that Chuck's body had accumulated illnesses from overwork. The doctor suggested he'd better exercise more, but Chuck said he simply didn't have time. It turned out his daughter had a serious illness when she was young, which spent almost all the family's money. Since then, Chuck's rest time became extremely scarce. So the next day, Simon took him running together. After getting along for a few days, Chuck finally decided to take Simon to his workplace so he could learn more details. At this time, Simon's true purpose was revealed. It turned out Chuck was a security guard for the Department of Damage Control. He got Simon a fake ID and brought him into the prison. Then Simon used the excuse of going to the toilet to sneak into the cell block. At the same time, Chuck also received a call from his wife. A huge sum of money had been credited to their account, enough for him to resign. Simultaneously, the agent reported to his superior. He went to the studio to do another test and found that on the ionic level, all objects had been interfered with. So he guessed Simon's ability was ionic energy control. At this moment, Simon finally found Trevor. Too late to catch up on old times, he blew the cell door flying first, then walked to Trevor's side. By the time the agent led people to the cell, only a big hole remained. The story ends here. This is a very different superhero series. It basically jumped out of the superhero world, focusing on an ordinary dreamer, Simon, who has superpowers but is very lost. The friendship between Simon and Trevor is very moving and is the essence of the series. Although there were misunderstandings and betrayals, the final ending was very good. At the same time, this is a bold attempt by Marvel. After Avengers, Endgame, the MCU went a bit off track, so the director simply ran onto another path. To be honest, the final effect is actually quite good. Friends who are interested are recommended to watch the original film. Alright, this video ends here. If you like my commentary, please subscribe to the channel. See you next time.